Today is going to be so much fun. It's going to be filled with stories and poetry and songs. But I'm not going to sing. Just, you don't want me to sing. But I can't wait to talk about today because it has come out of a lesson that God has walked with me through. And it's a lesson that I think all of us can relate to. And it has to do with when we're stuck in the darkness. Meaning, I think we've all experienced that moments where we're either caught in depression or sadness, or we have something mentally that's swirling around and we can't quite snap out of it. And I don't know about you, but I find myself falling into those pits more often than I like to admit. And sometimes I'm able to jump right back out, and other times I feel like I'm being pulled under and I don't know how to get out. So today's Unveiled podcast is called The Song in the Darkness, and I can't wait to share with you some of the revelations that God gave me. And before I continue, I am going to read an excerpt from the Chronicles of Narnia out of The Magician's Nephew. So this is from, I believe it's chapter 3. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to skip around just a little bit. And this has to do with, it has to do with a song in the darkness. "This is not Charn," came the witch's voice. "This is an empty world. This is nothing." And it really was uncommonly like nothing. There were no stars. It was so dark that they couldn't see one another at all, and it made no difference whether you kept your eyes shut or open. Under their feet there was a cool, flat something, which might have been earth, and was certainly not grass or wood. The air was cold and dry, and there was no wind. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It was very far away, and Diggory found it hard to decide from what direction it was coming. Sometimes it seemed to come from all directions at once. Sometimes he almost thought it was coming out of the earth beneath them. Its lower notes were deep enough to be the voice of the earth herself. There were no words. There was even hardly a tune. But it was, beyond comparison, the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. It was so beautiful, he could hardly bear it. The lion was pacing to and fro about that empty land and singing his new song. It was softer and more lilting than the song by which he had called up the stars and the sun, a gentle, rippling music. And as he walked and sang, the valley grew green with grass. It spread out from the lion like a pool. It ran up the sides of the little hills like a wave. In a few minutes, it was creeping up the lower slopes of the distant mountains, making that young world every moment softer. The light wind could now be heard ruffling like grass. Soon there were other things besides grass. The higher slopes grew dark with heather. Patches of rougher and more bristling green appeared in the valley. Diggory did not know what they were until one began coming up quite close to him. It was a little spiky thing that threw out dozens of arms and covered these arms with green and grew large at the rate of about an inch every 2 seconds. There were dozens of these things all around him now. When they were nearly as tall as himself, he saw what they were. "Trees!" he exclaimed. The stories of Narnia have captivated me since I was a little girl. And by the way, my name is Laura, and I am the host of Unveiled Podcast. I'm also the publisher and editor of Paola Lane magazine, and I love sharing stories on our Unveiled podcast. But anyway, back to Narnia. I loved Narnia so much that my mother made a Narnia quilt for me, and I still have it. Surprisingly, now that I'm in my 50s, I find that the stories of Narnia offer far more substance and delight than ever before. This one scene that I just recounted to you, I've been mulling over lately, and as I work through some of my own inner battles. And again, the scene was from the magician's Nephew, and it's actually the creation of Narnia. The main characters are Diggory and Polly, and they find themselves in a world yet created. There is nothing. As I read, there's a witch with them, and she says, "This isn't another world. This isn't Charn. This is nothing." And that's exactly where they were. It was nothing. It was only blackness. But then, as they later found out, Aslan was his name. It was the lion they referred to, arrives and begins to sing. And actually, the song comes before they see the source of that song. And as Aslan sings, a world is born. A different song is sung for the different aspects of creation. I encourage you to go back and read that story. I skipped over a lot of things, but at the very beginning, I read about how the low song and the low sound, as if the earth was speaking of itself. And then later, I didn't read this part, it talks about these light and many voices all of a sudden sang with him, and those were the stars, and they came out, and the song would change as different aspects of creation were coming out of this new world. And as I'm preparing this particular episode script, I got up really early in the morning because I woke up with this story in my mind, and I knew immediately, I was like, wow, I want to do a podcast episode about this because it was a new morning for me in the sense that the night before I was up late battling in the darkness, honestly. But I'll come back to that. So it was early in the morning, and I got up and I stayed in my pajamas, and I wrapped a light blanket around me because it's spring and the mornings, they're not hot, but they're still a little cool. And I opened the door, and the bird songs echoed through the woods. We live near Table Rock Lake in southern Missouri, and our home is actually in Mark Twain National Forest. So we are literally surrounded by the woods, and we're up at the top of a hill, and you could hear all of the birds' songs echoing throughout the woods and the hills. That's the only thing I could hear. And their songs, they're always loudest in the morning, I've noticed, and by evening, they fade away. And I was sitting there, and I supposed that they could be welcoming and creating their day through their song. And I thought there was no coincidence that I woke up with this vision and this memory of the story of Narnia and the blackness and a new world being spun into existence, and then sitting here in the gray of the early morning, listening to the birds singing and welcoming the day. And I thought I just knew that God had me there for that reason, and to really pay attention to what was happening. And I became, lately I've really been acutely aware of how my words create my life. But even so, I don't always choose them wisely as I should. And today, or this morning, the morning that I wrote this, I really wondered if I should not awaken to sing into existence my day, or at least speak into my day, filling it with joy and blessings of the Creator, instead of spouting off idle words that unknowingly curse my day. So Jesus tells us in the Bible that we will be accountable for any idle words we speak. Yet, do we really consider what that means? And that Jesus means what he says. So what are idle words? I think of them as foolish words that have no thought and they do not reflect the truth. And truth only comes through Yahweh, the Most High. I mean, we can try to create our own truth, but that doesn't mean it's truth. And so idle words, when we speak idle words, we're singing the wrong song into the atmosphere, because the Bible also tells us that our words have the power of life and death in them. And I think that's why Jesus tells us, be careful, you're going to be held accountable for your idle words, because the words we speak create. Even the words that I speak to you through this podcast, I am held accountable to. So I want to make sure that I am speaking good words. And honestly, I pray that anything I speak is from the Father, and anything that is not, that would fall to the ground and die, to be truthful. I don't want anything to come out of me, but at the same time, I'm also human, and I know that I'm full of sin, and thank goodness for Jesus, who cleanses me of my sin. But that doesn't make me sin less. Every day I wake up and I sin, and I don't want to. There's a difference. Oh, now I'm getting into theological discussions, and that's not what this podcast is about, but that is something for you to consider. Anyway, so I want to get back to words, how they create our lives, and my words create my life. And as I said, I don't always choose them wisely, or not as wisely as I should. Today I was just really struck with, I need to awaken and sing my day into existence. I want to fill it with joy and blessings of the Creator instead of spouting off curses. We can get up and say, and start complaining. And I do that. I'm holding up my hand because that is me. I struggle with complaining. And that is what I would say is foolish and idle words. We were made, you and I were made to be co-creators with the Creator God, Elohim. Elohim means Creator God. And Scripture says, ye are Elohim. And they're talking about us. And you think, well, how can that be? There's Elohim, big, capital letter Elohim, the Creator God. But why does Scripture say that we are Elohim? We are created in God's image, but I think it's pointing to the fact that we are co-creators with God. We are created in His image, and we are co-creators. Our words fashion our day. They impact those around us. I am deeply moved by the song of the birds. And especially this morning when I got up and I just listened, I was just so moved. And I'm like, what are they singing? What are they speaking into the day? And I thought, why do I not consider what song I am singing into my day? And I can tell you that I have put little to no thought into what I speak into my day. And we all do. I think we all have struggles that are a result of the fact that we live carelessly, in the sense that I don't think we take much thought into our day. And that's kind of what I wanted to speak about today, because that's what just really just bubbled up, almost like an explosion inside of me when I woke up and saw this vision and heard the birds. And God has been trying to teach me this for some time through bits and pieces. I mean, He does that. He drops like little breadcrumbs into our lives, and then He starts pulling them together like puzzle pieces and forming a picture. And I would say through a series of fortunate events recently, I was able to awake to this picture of Aslan singing Narnia into creation and hearing the birds, and then thinking of the battle that I fought late into the night last night. It suddenly made sense that I was singing the wrong songs into my life. And so then the question then becomes, how do we learn to sing into our day? And as I mentioned, God drops breadcrumbs into our lives. And so just because I had like an aha moment in this morning, what happens is it attracts all these breadcrumbs that God has been dropping into me. And all of a sudden it's like everything makes sense. Lessons that I learned at different times in my life are suddenly fit into this, and it creates a picture. And so I was able to look back and just think, this is like the voice of a poet or a bard who used to sing, and poets who, if we really listen to their words, are just so articulate about the reality of life. We read aloud, and that's how I was like, how do I learn to sing into my day? And that's when the idea of poets came into my mind. I've been listening a lot to poetry lately as I'm studying imagination, and it all fit. And I'm like, oh wow, when we speak aloud the words of things such as the Psalms or poets, we're reading from those who have learned to sing into their day. And like the Psalms, they're a great place to start. And as we start there, then we find the rhythm of the song or the poem that we read, and we do that. We find that rhythm by reading aloud. And soon then a melody rises in our own heart. Even if it's only a pattern and beat with the rising and lowering of voice inflections, it's still a melody. So, maybe I encourage you, pick up a book of poetry and allow the words of others to teach you how to sing again until your own song arises from your soul. And that's what I've been doing unknowingly. This poetry that I've been just really drawn to lately and really pulling into. I see that God is teaching me how to sing into my day. He's teaching me to find my own song, and our song, our own individual song, comes through the imagination, and it's not in the sense of something that our imagination in the sense of something being made up or fictitious, but imagination as the catalyst for awakening our soul and opening our eyes and ears, really warming up a cold heart. And if anything, start with only a few simple words and sing those out in the morning until they become your own and unlock a flood of inspiration to be poured out into your day. And like I said, God was trying to teach me this years ago, and I had started doing this unknowingly, realizing what I was doing. And then I kind of stopped and things got befuddled. And then God's bringing me back as I'm, like I said, researching imagination. And he's like pulling this all together. And I realized, oh, I see why he was trying to teach me to get up in the morning and speak out loud into my day. I didn't realize what I was doing, what he was trying to teach me, and now I do. And so here's the key that I've learned the hard way. Just as Aslan started by singing into the darkness, so too we must also sing into ours. We can't wait for something to appear. We must start in the darkness. And that's the hardest part. When it feels like there is no song to be sung or no hope for a song, which is honestly where I was last night. When we get to that point, I like to do is I like to think of, I open up the Psalms out of the Bible, and I think of King David, who is the author of many of the Psalms, which delight our soul. He was brilliant. A brilliant poet and songwriter. And so I suggest carefully read his words. And if you think about it, his Psalms almost always start with him singing in the darkness. And as he sings through his darkness, the light appears, and then praise and hope and joy erupt out of nowhere, and courage and imagination and determination. It all comes out of that. But King David, almost always starts singing in the darkness. As a person who often finds herself plummeted into deep darkness, I've learned the only way out is to sing in the darkness. And sometimes it takes days or weeks for me to squeak out those first notes of hope. And other times I see the darkness threatening me and I can ward it off. But I will say this, it takes faith to sing in the darkness because you think this isn't going to matter. But I will tell you that it always matters. I always start with like I said, Psalms are my go-to. When I am stuck, I open up the Psalms and I just cry out and I speak it in faith. I don't feel any of it. I don't feel joyful. I don't feel hopeful. that I start speaking them in faith, and it always pulls me out of the darkness. And in especially dark moments, I find that taking communion by myself opens my lips to sing the first notes of a new song. And that's actually what happened to me last night. I was so stuck, and I was like, I'm not going to go to bed stuck. So I grabbed some, I keep like little bottles of grape juice and some crackers, and I pulled those out, and I just had a time of communion, and I felt the darkness break. And that was the first note of my song. So you might be asking, well, what should I sing? And only you know. I would say ask God to reveal the song that you are to sing for you. Often I find it is the opposite of what I battle. So looking back, I can also see that at times it is spoken or sung out of inspiration, and it is singing into what is to come. Other times I speak and sing by the Holy Spirit. So I actually don't know what I am saying. My mind doesn't know, but my spirit and my soul does. When I have no words, that's when I ask the Holy Spirit to speak through me, and it's called praying in the Spirit. Some people call it speaking in tongues. Technically, speaking in tongues is speaking in another language, which really this is praying in the Spirit. And you can read some more. Acts and Romans both speak about praying in the Spirit and speaking in tongues. And so that's what I do. I'll just start to sing. And that's what I did last night after I communion. I just started to sing in the Spirit. And it just got lighter and lighter. And finally I felt like it's time to sleep. And so then I slept, and then I woke up with this vision of Narnia. And it was a beautiful, beautiful picture. I'm going to finish this episode with two things. First is a poem. Let me see if I can find it here. A poem by George Herbert called Bittersweet. Ah, my dear angry Lord, since thou dost love yet strike, cast down yet help afford, sure I will do the like. I will complain yet praise, I will bewail, approve. In all my sour, sweet days, I will lament and love. I love that poem by George Herbert. To me, the sour, sweet days, that's what they are. We can't avoid the darkness. We can't avoid the shadows. I think sometimes we think happy is all we should ever experience, but that's not reality. But joy and peace is being able to find that joy and peace within the sour and the sweet, to embrace the bitter and the sweet. So that, again, was by George Herbert. And then what I'm going to do is I wrote out my my song for today. And I'm going to share it with you so that you could use it as a catalyst to sing into your day and practice it, so that when dark times come, you can either use what I've written or you can write your own. And you know that when the dark times come, you know that the most creative and powerful songs start in the darkness. So you can, and that's what happened to me. I actually became thankful for the darkness, because the song of the morning was so much sweeter, and I think I say that in this. So I'm going to close it out with this. This is my song out of the darkness. I love the fresh scent of the morning. What joy it brings to my heart. Today I'm thankful to be alive, to be chosen to live at this moment in this place. I belong here. I delight to partner with Elohim in making this a great day. I bless the woods and the wildlife around my home. I bless my home, my life, the work of my hands. I choose to bring life and joy into every person I interact with. I see them with the eyes of the Father and love with the heart of the Father. My delight is in serving Adonai. I look forward to noticing the joy in the little things. I feel the hand of my Lord walking with me in dark places. Shadows may lurk and find me unaware, but there is a song in my heart put there by the Creator of the universe that pushes back the darkness. It has no power over me. Today I dance in the light. I sing a new song. Whatever today holds, my heart is full of joy. This day is full of creativity and peace. My heart chooses to see the goodness of this day with all of its opportunities, possibilities, and lessons to be learned. I can even be thankful for the darkness because the morning song is even sweeter. How can my heart know joy without pain, or the satisfaction of victory without a battle? How can a tree be made strong without the wind, or the flowers grow without the rain? So I'm not only grateful, but delighted by the rain, wind, battles, and darkness. They teach me how to live fully and completely. So today I look forward to a full and complete day. All right, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode 4, Song in the Darkness, and I have a gift for you. So that song that I wrote there at the very end of this episode, My Song in the Darkness, I have that available for you for free for you to download. You'll find the link to that in the description of this podcast, or you could always go to payolalane.com/EP04, and that stands for episode 4, so it's EP04, or just look in the description for that download. Also, you may want to, if you liked this podcast, if you like the episodes, you'll love the magazine that I put out 3 times a year. Again, it's Payola Lane Magazine. There's links below. Issue number 9 is on imagination and vision. And a lot of what we talked about today came out of preparation for the imagination issue. Now, all of my issues are always available, so they don't go out of style or print or whatever. They're theme based, so each issue has a new theme, and I make it like a journal, and so that you can interact with the stories that are in there and the thoughts that are in there. I offer an opportunity to interact and leave your feedback or thoughts, or to journal, and I like to think of it as something that you would hand down to somebody. But anyway, you can check it out at payolalane.com, and all the other links, the links directly to issue number 9 are down in the description below. So thanks so much for listening today, and I bless your day. May you find your song in the darkness.